We're all stoked to be here. Hi, I'm Tom. I work at Unity. You met me during the last one. I'm actually super honored to be joined by Matt, who is a senior advocate here on our Unity Game Services team. The man has been doing developer advocacy longer than I have, and he's kind of a wizard at this kind of stuff. So I'm stoked to see him present. Reminder that this is part of like a partnership, and so because of this, there will be opportunity to get some certifications tied to Unity that'll be distributed, and then you can get the study exams and get ready for those. And yeah, that's the whole announcement. Hope you're all having a good time. And Matt, take it away, sir. I'll mute and let you go.
Okay, cool. So hello everyone. As I said, my name is Matt Dondelinger. Today I'm going to be talking to you about monetization in game designs. So I title this presentation "Protect Your Players," and as we go through it, hopefully you'll understand that. I want to thank the GTP for the opportunity to be here, and for Thomas for reaching out to me. I love talking about this stuff, so this is going to be fun for me, and hopefully it's fun/informative for all of you. So here's the agenda we have for this today. I'm going to do a short introduction about myself, talk about sort of my history in the games industry and with Unity, going over protecting your players, sort of giving you a definition of what that actually means relative to game design, going through my sort of key monetization design pillars. So what I think and what I've learned through my experience is sort of the key 4 things you need to focus on. Give you some examples of strong versus weak monetization in games, and then a little bit of how Unity can help, because I work for Unity, so I have to be a corporate shill and like show off everything that we can do amazingly. And then also just a quick wrap up, and then we'll do a Q&A session where you all can feel free to ask me any questions relative to this or relative to anything that you saw in the presentation or just want to ask me. So yeah. So as I said, I've been in the games industry for a while. So I spent 15 years in the game industry so far, which makes me feel old. Previously, I was a monetization designer on Fallout 76, Breach, which was a short-lived game for a startup company, QC Games. And then I got my start with monetization with Star Wars: The Old Republic, working on that game. I began my journey before that in QA. So I've gone from QA all the way up to monetization designer, kind of just fell into it by accident. And it was one of the happiest accidents I could ever hope for. I love monetization in games. I feel when it's done correctly, it can give you so much, and it's a very fun job to be involved with. And I've been with Unity a little less than 2 years, so about 1 year and 3/4, whatever you want to call it. And I was brought over specifically because I have game and monetization experience. So they wanted someone who could give presentations like these and also show what Unity can do and help sort of bridge that gap. As a developer advocate, my job is to basically be the go-between between Unity and our users. So I talk to users about all the awesome things Unity has to offer for games. I get feedback from the users and give that to the team, and do that in kind of our constant stream of information, just trying to make the users feel like their voices are being heard and get the information, and then also help Unity make better products. And then I also did this because Unity gave me the opportunity to do presentations like this. So now let's actually sort of get into the presentation. When I talk about protecting players, the main thing I want this to think about is protecting the players from being exploited. When I got my start on Star Wars: The Old Republic, my lead at the time told me that as a monetization designer, our job was to be Tron. And for those of you that are young enough to not know what that movie is, that movie is basically where Tron has to protect the players. And so that's what I feel you're trying to do as a monetization designer. You're trying to protect the players from being exploited. You're trying to make sure that whatever monetization design decisions you make as a team or as a game, you have the players in mind. You want to make sure that you're doing things that, as a player, this doesn't feel bad, doesn't give you bad feelings or that. But all that being said, at the end of the day, games are a business, so you need to remain profitable. So you can't give it all away for free, but you also don't have to treat your players as like a cash register. And so these are sort of the key things that you're protecting from the way I see it. So the first one is perceived value. Whenever a player makes a purchase in a game for monetization, they feel that there's some value behind it, whether it's a cosmetic, whether it's some kind of power up, something like that. Players feel like they feel there's value in their purchase, and they want to have that. You never want to buy something and be like, why did I buy this? Why do I have this in my game? This doesn't do anything for me. That's something that you want to protect. Consistent experience. This is something that a lot of games fall into the trap of. You want to give players the same expectations, and you want to meet those expectations every time. So For example, if you give a loot box that has 5 items in it, you can't have the next loot box now give you 4 items, or vice versa. You need to make sure that whatever you're presenting the players with is consistent. You don't want to constantly be changing your monetization systems or your monetization tools, because it'll lead to confusion by the players. They won't know what to expect, and they'll be hesitant to spend because they'll be worried that, well, if I spend now, maybe it'll change, it'll be less valuable down the line, things like that. And then the final thing I feel you're protecting is player options. So in my opinion, you want monetization to be a choice. You never want it to be something that's forced upon the players. So you want to give players the option to monetize if they want to, or convert. Players, again, if they perceive the value and they feel comfortable with it, they'll usually make that choice. And that's usually how you can be successful with it. But if you're forcing on the players, like if you're blocking content or things like that, you're taking away that choice. And again, you're hurting players' sentiment, and you're also hurting yourselves, because players won't want to be spending money on things that they have. Like, if they can't play the game at all without spending some money, many of them will drift away from it. And here's an example of something, basically what I went through in my career to sort of put that into perspective of this player choice and protecting your players. So we have an MMO that's going from a subscription service to free to play. I haven't said what the MMO is in this exact slide, but I'm sure you could understand based on my job history which MMO I'm talking about. But with this conversion, you're having to adjust, you're having to change the player experience. So you're having to decide what's free, what's costs money, what do we keep away from the players, what do we give to the players. And while you're making this decision, you also, like, to make these choices, you have to weigh the risk and the rewards. Like, well, if we let players progress only to level 10 before we start charging them, what will happen? Well, players could leave, players could get alienated, players might not get into the game. Especially with an MMO, you have to make sure players stay involved for a long time. It's like, okay, well, if we lose those players, can we afford it? It's all these sort of things. These are all the types of decisions you need to make in this situation. And this is just sort of the example of where I sort of learned that thinking of protecting like a player. With this MMO, we made sure, you can see that we sort of looked at those risk and rewards, and then we decided what was a good conversion, or what was a good place to monetize things and what wasn't. This doesn't work for every team. Obviously, not everyone here is going to be converting a AAA MMO to a free-to-play model, but it's that sort of thing to think about. And this is sort of an example of what I did in my career before coming to Unity. So now we're on to the monetization design principles. And these are the 4 things that I think every monetization designer or any team that's monetizing should think about. Plan things early, compare and contrast, being flexible, and staying informed. I'm going to go through each of these, so don't worry. I'm not just going to talk babble. So first one, planning things early. I'm sure I'm sure all of you are working in games in some capacity. You know that you need to plan things out. You can't just off the cuff decide, we're gonna do monetization. We made a game, let's monetize it. I don't know, let's loot boxes. All right, cool, we're done. It's done, easy peasy. That doesn't work. That leads to, not only will it probably not lead to good return on investment, it won't feel good to the players. You want to plan things out and treat it like you would any other part of the game. You take time to plan combat, to plan your progression system, to plan your multiplayer experience. You take the time to do that, and you need to do that with your monetization model. A big reason why you want to do this is you want to have the whole team involved. Like, early on in my career, the monetization was kind of off in a corner, doing our thing, and the rest of the team was doing something else. This doesn't help, because I can have ideas of what to monetize in a game, but I can get better ideas from the team that put the game together. I may think monetizing something, a certain feature of a game, won't cause any trouble, but if I'm talking to the rest of my team, they can be like, if you monetize that, that's going to block progression for like 80% of our players. That's a good red flag. And that's something you'll get from this. You'll get ideas by getting the rest of the team involved. You'll get more. You can come up with your first like sort of initial idea, but getting more of them involved will help. And it will just build up better ideas and avoid pitfalls like the one I mentioned. It also improves team morale. Even if you're just telling the rest of the team what you think your monetization plan will be, that will help the team. Nobody likes to be sort of left out from a planning thing, even if it doesn't necessarily involve you. It just helps team morale to be like, hey, everybody, this is what we're planning to do with our game. Even if they aren't going to be really affected by it or have a hand in it, it still helps. And it's a good thing to do, just to, again, include everybody and possibly get ideas or avoid issues you may not have known. And then the last thing with planning that I really want to call out is team resources. So as I said earlier, you want a consistent experience for the players. So whatever you give the players once, they are going to expect that amount or more. So in my career, we kind of called this feeding the beast. And that's one of the struggles of a monetization designer is I was constantly searching for things to give the players or to offer the players to sell them. And you can't, there's no take backsies. So if I create a battle pass that has 100 levels and it lasts for 2 months, the next battle pass has to either do the same or do more, or else players will rightly so be like, wait a minute, why am I spending this much money? The same with putting things on the store. If you put things on your store for $20, you can bring the price down if you need to, like on a sale or something like that, but you can't go up. The second you go up, everyone on Reddit, social media, and your players are going to lose it because, hey, what the heck? I paid $20 for this and now you're charging $25 for the same thing. So you want to make sure that whatever type of system you've designed or you're going to design, your team can meet that. So your team can our team generate enough art assets? Can our team support all the engineering requirements for a battle pass or for loot boxes or for what have you? You need to take these into account, and not just for the, again, like I said, not just the initial launch of something, but a future. So with live service games and monetization, it's not just a one-time thing. It's like, we got to keep this going. We got to feed the beast. So make sure that with your plans, you do this early and you see what your resources are, and that save you a ton of trouble, and it also make your system go a lot smoother. So, excuse me. The next thing is compare and contrast. So similar to what a lot of developers do for other aspects of the game, look at what your competition does. If you are a mobile match 3 game, or if that's what you're making, look at other mobile match 3 games and see what type of monetization do they do. Do they use a loot box? Do they use battle pass? Do they use a subscription service? Who knows? Like, that's something you should look at. Don't be afraid to look at what's there. You want to do this, again, sort of going on that beat of a consistent experience for the players. If players in a space, so in mobile games or in MMOs or in first-person shooters, if they've been experiencing the same sort of monetization, you want to be close to that so you don't confuse them. If everyone's expecting a battle pass from your game and you can do it, that's what you should do. You want to make sure that you're staying current with whatever the market is doing. You don't want to fall behind or do something that has fallen out of favor. A good example is loot boxes. Loot boxes are like about 5 years ago even used to be very, very lucrative. Like, everybody liked them. Well, everybody put up with them. And the teams used them repeatedly, and there wasn't a big issue. But recently, that's become an issue. People don't like loot boxes. A lot of countries think they're illegal now, so that's another thing. You don't want to sort of lag behind in this, because not only could it hurt player things, it could also lead to federal issues or government issues, which you want to avoid. And then one thing I want to call out with comparing and contrasting, don't do copy paste. So if you see something that you think will work for your game, don't just, okay, we're going to do that exact system. Again, this leads back into that planning system. Once you find what you think will work or what you think fits in with the market, plan it out, because one model does not work for every team. If I'm trying to replicate what a 500-person dev team is doing and I only have 5 people on my team, I can't do that. There's no way I can match the velocity or the amount of content. So make sure, again, that whatever you decide to do, even if you're saying like, okay, we're going to do exactly what Fortnite does, we're going to do that exact battle pass model. Okay, use the model, but maybe pare it down a little bit based on how much content you can generate and things like that. That's one thing I want to call out here, is do not copy and paste. It won't work. It'll be very bad for everybody involved. The next thing is being flexible. So again, for many of you that have been in the games industry, things change. They love to change quickly and often. You need to embrace it. There's no way I can say that, oh, if you plan the perfect model, it will be perfect for the next 30 years. No, I can't say that. I don't even the best systems, sometimes those will fall off in a couple years. You just need to do your due diligence, plan, compare, and then just go with it. If things change, if the market changes, if all of a sudden everybody decides battle passes are the worst thing ever, you need to say, okay, we need to figure out how to roll with that change and just embrace it. Things are going to change. It's not the end of the world. It's just you need to be aware that the change is happening. And when I mentioned being aware of the change, this is where I want to call out something specifically. Every game, I don't care how small your team is, how indie you are, or how big you are, get some form of analytics. Analytics is huge, not only for monetization, but for live service games in general. Being able to understand what your players are doing, where they're having issues is huge. It can, obviously monetization, it can help because you can see where players are converting, what they're spending on. So again, you can adjust your plan as it goes. So maybe you thought, oh, everybody's going to buy these t-shirts. You have analytics that shows, no, nobody's buying the t-shirts, everybody's buying the hats. So again, okay, shift resources to produce more hats. Don't worry about the t-shirts. That's a great thing of analytics. In a non-monetization aspect, analytics can help you find pitfalls in your game. Maybe players aren't progressing past level 2, or maybe it's taking them 4 hours to progress past level 2 when you assumed it would take them 30 minutes. Having some form of analytics to see these types of things will help your team immensely, because again, you can see what's changing, you can see the issues, and you can address them before it becomes a full-blown issue, or before your entire player base leaves because, hey, the devs aren't fixing anything, the heck with it. So again, that along with the being flexible and stuff, part of that I say is get some form of analytics. Unity, UGS has a great analytics, especially for people who may be new to it. But I'm not going to say if you prefer Google's or somebody else's, get any kind of analytics. Any form you can get will be beneficial. Although Unity's is the best because I work for Unity. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. And then the last thing is, the last sort of pillar is staying informed. This one, again, it might seem like kind of a obvious one, but a lot of people sort of get in, like a lot of times you can get in your own little world when you're making a game or working on a game and sort of ignore what's going on in the outside peripherals. Pay attention to what's going on in the game industry. Like I said with loot boxes, those used to be the most amazing thing, and now they are not the most amazing thing at all. Even battle passes, we're seeing that battle passes are changing now. They're going from the sort of linear model to that sort of bingo model that Fortnite and the new Call of Duty have. These are things you want to pay attention to. You also explore outside your genre. So if you're making a mobile game, look at what AAA games are doing. It may not be a 1-to-1 ratio, but there may be something you can do that, or you can see that a AAA studio is doing that, hey, I could do that in my mobile game. Or even vice versa. If you're working at a AAA studio, maybe look at what mobile games are doing. An example I always give is ads. Everybody thinks ads are only for mobile games, but if you do it in the right setting, you could put an ad in a sandbox game, like a GTA game. You put the ad on a billboard and make it fit within the world. That could work. Is that a perfect idea? No, it might take some finesse, but this is the sort of thinking you should do. I just, with this one too, I want to say, don't remain idle. Don't assume that, again, we're okay, we've got our model, we're fine, we're going to observe the change, but we're just going to stick with it. Constantly be exploring. If you have a really good monetization system that's going and flowing correctly, that's the ideal time to have your monetization team sort of explore new things or experiment with things, because you have that runway to do it. You don't want to have to be trying to create a whole new monetization plan as you're losing users and your revenue is going down. So again, try to pay attention to what's going on. Keep constantly sort of pushing to create new things or adapt new things, and don't be afraid to look for new ideas in different areas or genres of video games. So I've been babbling about this stuff for a while now, and so why should you care about what I'm talking about? Well, the first thing is it will lead to a lot smoother product launches. Whether you're launching a new game, an update, whatever, it will just help so much if you sort of follow these 4 steps, because you'll avoid stupid errors, stupid things, or bad decisions that you may have made and not realize. Like I said, with talking to the team and figuring out, like, what can we monetize, what can we not monetize? This will help you avoid that, not have that issue, because nobody likes to launch and then 10 minutes later see Reddit blowing up with, hey, this thing's broken, or hey, this thing doesn't work. Again, doing that planning, doing that compare and contrasting, that can help you. Another huge thing that I love to see is you can create player champions. So what I mean by player champions are players who understand what you're doing, get value out of your game, and defend you sort of in the public sphere. The best example I have is when I was working on Fallout 76. Fallout 76 kind of had 2 main audiences: the sort of old school Fallout players who played the first games, really liked the single player, kind of wanted that experience, and then the newer players who were more MMO live service players. Often we would get a lot of grief on Reddit or Twitter or things like that about the monetization we were doing. But soon as we kept this course of like protecting our players, giving them value, not trying to cheat them out of anything, other players notice that, and you would see those other players sort of shout down the other ones. I'm not saying I want to create like a social media war, but that's helpful when you see that you have players that get what you're doing and enjoy it and defend you. That means you don't have to spend any resources defending yourself or marketing to sort of get over it. Like if players are defending you, you have like, that's great because you don't have to spend anything, and it feels better than having a designer or a producer or a community person having to go on all of these sites and be like, no, we're trying to do this, that, or the other. That it's huge if you can get that. And again, if you sort of follow these steps, players will see that. Players are not stupid. If they see what you're doing, they'll understand that, hey, they're not trying to take money or get money out of us. They're trying to give us things of value to purchase. And then the last thing is extending your game's life. So Star Wars: The Old Republic is still a thing. Like they put out an update a few months or several months ago, but it's still going. A lot of people don't realize that when they talk to me and see my resume. They're like, oh, I remember that game. I thought it's dead now. No, a big reason for that is, in my opinion, the monetization. And the same with 76. Both of those games had sort of a similar trajectory of there was a lot of hype. The launch didn't go as well as expected. And then monetization kind of had to keep the lights on while the rest of the team was able to fix or address the problems. This is what you can do with good monetization. You can reduce your churn. So again, players will see what you're doing and they'll understand it, and they'll be far less likely to leave at the last minute or run out on you. They'll stay there and they won't churn out of your game. The other thing is it'll increase acquisition because players will hear about your game. They'll be like, oh, there's this awesome mobile game or this awesome indie game that has really cool features and they have awesome hats, like things like that. Like that'll get around, and that's a good loop that you want to be in of reducing your churn and keeping players in. Because again, as a live service game, that's sort of what you're paying attention to the most is what are our numbers? What are players? How many players are staying in the game? How many players are we losing? Things like that. And then another thing to think about from a developer standpoint, all of this stuff will help you acquire talent or keep the talent you have. I know a lot of, especially indie devs and things, don't really think about it as much, but if your game is doing good things, other developers will see that and many of them will want to be a part of it. I can speak to that because that's part of why I went to some of the places I went to. If you're doing good monetization, other developers will see that and you can get talent, which is great because again, you want to work with the best in the industry. And if you're doing these types of things, that will help with that a lot. And so, I'm kind of going to go over some of the best practices. This might be a little sort of repeat of things I've hashed off, but I just want to make sure that I cover these very, very much. So the first thing, again, best practice, make it valuable to the players. Don't give something that has no value. And again, this is that whole thing of looking at it from a player's perspective. So a lot of people, when they hear that you sell cosmetics, oh, that doesn't matter. It doesn't affect gameplay. Well, it doesn't for gameplay, but it gives people value. As someone who purchases cosmetics, I like to look like a really cool character or a character that I think looks cool. That gives me value. If you're giving that, that helps. If you're just selling things that like, oh, a cosmetic item that I can't see or nobody can see, there's no value in that. Why would I want that? Or a boost that gives me a boost to something that I never do. Why would I need that? These are the things you need to think about when you're planning out your monetization. And these are the things of a good monetization system. The less fluff or less useless things you have in your store or in your monetization system is better because, again, players will notice that, avoid it, and then you've just wasted developer time putting those things there. Another thing is blocking progression. I am super, super strong about this. Don't block progression behind paywalls. If you want to make players grind, that's fine. Although I would also say make it a realistic grind. We've seen some games where players do the math and it's like, oh, I can get everything on the battle pass if I play for 300 years. Again, that's not very realistic. You want to let players, again, you want to give players choice. If you make something convenient, that's fine, but like don't lock things or make a game. I played mobile games, especially earlier ones where, okay, I want to dig a tunnel. I can either wait 3 weeks to dig that one tunnel or I could pay $1 now. That doesn't feel good. That feels kind of like, well, tunnels are just to connect rooms. Why are you making me pay for this simple thing? Don't block progression. It won't help. And it'll, again, players will do the math and then you get those nice Reddit posts and be popular on Kotaku for all the wrong reasons. Your monetization, pricing it well in the market. So don't like I said, don't under or overprice your things. By comparing and contrasting and seeing what other teams are doing, you can get an idea. But also do the math for yourself. Like if an item takes this much money to create, you need to make sure that you're making at least some sort of profit or enough of a profit for what you're selling it for to allow you to keep creating that. For example, if an item costs $5 to make and you're selling it for $3, that's not really, unless you have somewhere else to make up that money, you're not really turning a profit, which means you won't have very long with your game. Another best practice is make it easy to access. One thing that I hate, and it drives me nuts, and maybe it's because I'm just older and not as smart, is complicated monetization systems. If a system is too complicated for a player to do it, they won't do it. It's like nobody wants to have to read a manual to be able to do the monetization system. They want to see what's available, how much does it cost? Okay, cool. I want that. I don't want that. You don't want to have to be where it's, oh, I have to go to this person. I have to talk to this thing. I have to open up this menu. Then I have to dance around 3 times and wait till Tuesday of the second week of a month to be able to purchase that. Like that, if you make something super convoluted, players won't do it and it won't have very much value. And again, with all these, I'm pushing this again, is all of these things will lead to less negative public sentiment. Social media isn't reality, but it's a good barometer for how your players are feeling. I think like you don't need to, if you're getting bad press or not a lot of social media thing, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but it's a good warning sign that, hey, something may not be right with what we're doing, or maybe we need to adjust it. And then here's some, again, I'm rehashing this, but I'm gonna keep banging this into people's head because I like to do it. These are some of the pitfalls of monetization, some of the issues I've seen that hurt. Again, no value for the players. We talked about that. If it doesn't give you value, nobody's going to purchase it. Nobody wants to purchase it. Blocking progression. Again, don't block progression for all the reasons we talked about. Then the other one of over underpricing. Again, this is the same thing. And remember what I said about consistency for the players. If you price something at a certain point, you can't raise that price unless you add something to the offer. If you try to just change the price willy-nilly, you're kind of in a world of hurt, because again, players will notice it, players will call it out, and a lot of players will get annoyed with it. Another pitfall here is difficulty access, but I want to talk about dated models. This is that same thing we were talking about with loot boxes and other forms of monetization. If it's an older mode or something that's fallen out of favor, players will call it out, say it's bad, not be happy with it, and you'll have to deal with sort of that issue. And you won't, at the end of the day, you won't get any money from it, which means it was wasted time and wasted effort. And all of these will lead to poor players' experience. That's the biggest pitfall of all of these, is just having a poor player experience. You need to sort of look at everything from the player's perspective. If you are designing these things, play your game, access these systems. If it feels comfortable to you, if it feels all right, if you feel like you actually want to spend, that's a good sign that you're avoiding this issue. But the biggest thing is if players have negative feelings, like I myself have turned off games because of monetization. Like the gameplay feels amazing, I'm having so much fun in the game, but the monetization system is either so out of whack or so obtrusive with my gameplay, I turn the game off. It's like, oh no, I'm done. I don't care how fun the game is, I just don't want to deal with this. And again, all these things will lead to that negative experience and players leaving your game. So Unity is here to help. And then my main set of knowledge for Unity is Unity Gaming Services. For those that don't know, Unity Gaming Services is a lot of these tools here that I've shown on the slide. They're basically here to support you while you're making your game, or especially once you finish making your game. And our focus is not mainly, but our focus is heavily in like sort of the live service games. All of these tools are engine agnostic. So that's another thing with this. With the UGS group, we kind of have the mantra of, we hope you made it in Unity, but even if you didn't, we want you to succeed. So we want you to have these tools to succeed. So again, even if you did it in Unreal or another one, if you did it in the Hero engine or the Source engine, we want these tools to be available for you. And as you can see, there's a lot of them here. Obviously, the first ones I'm going to focus on are monetization. So we have the Unity ads and things like that. One thing to call out with this list, it's a little in flux now because, as many of you probably have heard, Iron Source and Unity have merged. So we're sort of figuring out the order of operations for Iron Source products and all this, but the same sort of tools will be available. They may just have a different name. But so Unity ads, again, for you mobile developers, you know what ads are. These are things that everybody's sort of been, everyone's been used to. But again, these are good. The ads are a good initial step into monetization. In-app purchases, which is a store, obviously in-game stores, another great sort of entry-level thing, especially if you have a smaller team and you don't feel comfortable doing like battle passes or things like that. This is a good starting point. Another thing, like I said, I want to call out is the analytics tool. So UGS Analytics is amazing. I've done some presentations on that. If you Google it, there's a analytics bootcamp that will sort of go over UGS Analytics and how to use it, but it's great for all levels of developers. I know many, especially indie devs or new developers that I talk to, can be a little intimidated by analytics because a lot of formulas, a lot of numbers, what actual things do I care about in terms of events? UGS Analytics takes a lot of that guesswork out of the way. We have a lot of built-in initial like dashboards and things like that, so you can easily see what's going on in your game, both from a monetization standpoint and from a in-game, like what players are doing. I highly recommend checking that out. And also, if you're one of those really super analytics users who has like SQL formulas that they love and always use, we have those type of tools. So we have a SQL Data Explorer in UGS Analytics that you can use that can help get you as crazy a formula as you want to get. Again, I cannot stress it enough. Look at this analytics or look at some other analytics. I almost, if this wasn't a monetization talk, I would almost say prioritize analytics over any of the monetization options. But because it's a monetization talk, you should prioritize the monetization stuff. But yeah, we also have a lot of other tools for like multiplayer, using the cloud for like managing resources in the background. Again, I know a lot, in my experience, a lot of people sadly haven't heard about Unity Gaming Services, but I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you don't care about the monetization features or anything, look at this for other stuff. We've tried to make, like I said, multiplayer, which a lot of smaller teams have had trouble with because they may not necessarily have someone familiar with it. We have multiplayer features that take a lot of the guesswork out of it and make it a lot easier. Ways to engage with your community, do events and overrides to sort of build up your community. I highly recommend checking it out. And so we get to the end here of my formal talking. Again, I just want to stress protecting your players is key for a successful game. Like, keep your players in mind. It sounds so simple, but it can be difficult at times. Just think about your players when you're putting your game together, when you're creating something monetization wise or even game wise. Look at it from a player's perspective. Put yourself in the player's shoes. Would I have fun with this? Would I not like this? And you can sort of find the right way to go. Remember those key design principles, or the MTX design principles that I talked about: planning things early, compare and contrast, being flexible, and constantly be adapting. So constantly be staying informed about what's going on. And then lastly, there's a couple things here that I said for some help with Unity tools or services. Again, the Unity Gaming Services website, that's a great source of information for all of these tools. We have a lot of like intros, so if there's something you don't necessarily know what it is, you can look at it and see. A lot of installation guides to help you install everything you need, and sort of find your way through everything. The forums is a great source of information. We have Unity blogs and Unity Learn. Again, great sites to find more information about anything Unity-wise that you want to do. And remember that Unity is here to help, whether it's UGS or some other thing or just the editor. Unity wants to succeed. We want every game designer to have the opportunity to create their perfect game or what they think is the perfect game. And so we can do that. And then again, huge thank you to the group here for giving me a chance to speak with you. Here's my contact information and my goofy picture. Feel free to shoot me an email, hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, whether you want to talk about monetization, you want to talk about Unity, you want to talk about games, you want to talk about anything. Just feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat. If you have questions about something else Unity related that I haven't gone over, like, I don't know, something with the editor or some other service that I haven't talked about, and you don't know who to talk to, message me. I'll more than happy to try to root around and figure out to get you in contact with somebody. So yeah, I'm here to help. This is my job to talk to developers such as yourselves, and then help get you the information you need or get Unity your information. And so yeah, if we want, can start doing questions if there are. Hopefully there's some.
Yeah, there's a one in chat already actually that I think is actually pretty interesting, and I've got one for you too. But it's like, how do you? What are some ways you think about calculating like how much an item is worth?
I mean, a lot of it is the main way I do it is sort of the resources it took to create that item. So, obviously you can't really look at a number, but sort of look at the time. How long did it take an asset to go from the idea stage to in the game? And you can sort of figure out, that's a good way to see how much a thing is worth. It's not, there's no good formula, but again, you should look at, okay, how much do I consider my artist time is worth or my time is worth, and then sort of do that math. It's also, a lot of it too will maybe based on how much money you're trying to make or how much you need to stay profitable, even if it's not necessarily based on how much time or resources it took to make that one item. If you're only selling those one kind of items, you may need to just look at how much revenue do I need to generate to keep my sort of studio / game going. That's sort of a good way I would look at it.
So I actually have a follow-up on that, because it comes from an older meme from earlier in the mobile phone era, but I think it's still applicable today, right? Like, there's still some folks like that will spend, $7 on a coffee at Starbucks and yet may or may not pay $1 to $2 for an app on an app store, right? How do you see that perception changing, and then like how do you see that through monetization to motivate users to change that perception a little bit?
So I think the perception is changing just out of sheer comfort and familiarity. Like, live service games used to be much rarer. It wasn't as common, especially like with mobile phones, they sort of became super common. And I think as people have become more comfortable with it, and I think just like different generations are more expecting different things. Like that coffee example you used, early on when Starbucks first started, there was plenty of people, and there's still a couple people I know now who are like, I am not spending $7 on a thing of coffee. You're out of your crazy mind. And I think as you go on and show like value or show that it's fun and engaging, I think that's will sort of get that to change. I think it's changing a lot. Like, I think now, especially with the line blurring between what a mobile game is and what like a video and like what a console or PC game is, like, even more so now it's becoming like, oh, these are both games and I'm just spending money whether I want to or not. Yeah, I think that's a big thing to pay attention to. And I think that it's happening naturally, but the only way you can sort of do it is try to make the best game, which is much easier said than done, and try to make your best system. There's no simple thing to do it.
No, that's fair. So this is a question coming from Eduardo. Do you have a procedure that you think you follow to monetize like a paid app, or do you recommend in-app purchases as a strategy instead, or do you have a preference that way?
I mean, it really depends on what it is. If it's again, it's sort of seeing what value you can give. Like, if you think that it's valuable to just pay for the app straight up, and like getting an app sale will work, and the app has enough content or enough things in it to make it worth, I think that's fine. In-app purchase strategy works well too. It really depends on your individual situation and what game. Like, when you say app, I assume you're meaning game, but whichever. Like, it really depends. I think one thing too is like a similar thing is doing too much of it. If your game can support it, do the monetization that works. But like, if your game is very lightweight, you may just want to do if your game is very lightweight, you may just want to be like, we're going to try to do ads or maybe an in-app purchasing strategy rather than charging for the app. Like, especially nowadays, if you're going to charge just a straight up cost for the app, there needs to be something there, like solid content there, or at least some proof of a road plan of like future content that you'll be developing.
No, but I think it's a good answer, right? Because that is, I think strategically you have to think, what is my app delivering, right? Because I mean, you look at games like I think of Genshin Impact, right, which has a lot of gameplay available to it for arguably no cost. We could debate their monetization strategy, but
Yeah.
It's a big RPG that costs you off the jump $0, right? So I have a question, and then I'll jump into these other ones too. Are there any games you've played recently that you think have an exceptional monetization strategy, or that you've seen and you're like, oh, this is actually a really well put together piece?
Yeah, one that I've seen that I really like right now is Marvel Snap. Like, Marvel Snap,
I love that game.
has put out an interesting take on, especially for a CCG, because like, for those who don't know, Marvel Snap is a card game, a mobile card game. Most of those card games is starting with Magic, the actual handheld version. were basically loot boxes. That's what a magic pack is. It's a loot box. And that kind of led into this stuff. Seeing how Marvel Snap has sort of changed it to where, okay, you get the cards by playing, and you're basically only spending on some cosmetics and maybe some extra energy to upgrade your cards to then unlock more things. Again, it's a very non-obtrusive system. It gives you value for your purchase. Like if I'm really in, like the cards are different. For those who don't know, again, the cards are different Marvel superhero characters. So if I'm really into Wolverine and I see a variant of the Wolverine from a comic book in the 90s that I loved, I'm going to spend some money on that because I want that. But I can play the game, and I've been playing the game since beta for free, and like I haven't monetized once. I've come close, but it's like I've been able to progress and play, unlock cards. I'm at level like 2,900 or something.
I'm so jealous you're in the beta.
Yeah, so like I've been playing for a long time, and I think that's a really, really awesome way to do it. Another one that I like is what Fortnite and Call of Duty are doing, having the non-linear battle pass. So what it is, for those that don't know, normal battle passes are A to B. You just progress. Like I get a level, get a level, get a level. Each level you unlock something, whether you're on the premium or the free track. With the new one, or what Fortnite is doing, you get to choose. So there's different sections, kind of like a bingo card, and you're like, initially you have to unlock a few spots. Then you can pick, do I want to unlock this one or this one? Okay, I'm going to unlock this one because it's got a weapon skin or a character skin I really like. That, again, is giving players choice. They get to see what's coming up, and they get to decide, like, I don't want this. I don't really care about this right now. I want to grind these. And obviously, if you want to spend, you can buy all of them. But I think that's a great way to do it, of giving players choice and letting them see what it is.
Cool. Now it makes a lot of sense. I can't wait till Marvel Snap gets head to head so I can battle you. I want to battle you.
And so one thing it popped in my head, and I haven't really talked about it. One thing too is under monetization is a problem. Like an example I want to give, and not to hate on the developers, I love the game. Aliens Fireteam Elite. That game is amazing. It's a 4-person sort of swarm killer. I think I can't think of the game it's similar to, but like 4 players playing as Marines. You got to go through a bunch of aliens or other creatures, get to the end, defeat, get loot. They launched the game, and the only monetization they have is DLC. So like I bought the DLC, and I want to support them. I would love to give them more money by purchasing stuff, just because I want to fund the game, especially because they're a smaller studio. There's no option. That leaving that money on the table, like they implemented a sort of battle pass already, but it's just for free, which again, I'm not hating on, but it's just like, I feel like, especially because they have cosmetics already built in with gearing out your Marine, your weapon, make an in-game shop, or make something where I can give you all some more money. Another thing is like player gifting. That's a huge thing for a lot of MMOs and things. Is if players like your game, they want to fund it. And so if they want to fund it, they need a way to do that. They just won't mail you checks of money, although that would be awesome. But so cool. I make sure that if you make a game, like a live service game, even if you can somehow budget it to make it free and just put it out there, if you have the resources, put some kind of monetization in there, just to, again, if players really like it, they'll support it, and it can help you do more.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, like Marvel Snap, I intentionally bought the season pass because I played 20 hours of it in the first week, and I was like, okay, like you've earned my $10, right? Like more than enough. So we have a question here from Mika. In regards of loot boxes and battle passes, why are they no longer as successful? I know you talked a little bit about like the government issues and things like that, but then how quick do you think monetization plans get outdated, or are they outdated by another trend?
So first, a small correction if I came across like that. I think battle passes still work, and I fully believe they work. So I don't think they work. Loot boxes fell out of favor just because of 2 factors. One, there's no real control. Like no matter what I do with a loot box, I can't improve my chances of getting it, and I have no choice in it. So from a player's perspective, it's a dice roll. And that gets really annoying, especially if you're spending money, or if you've been doing it a lot and you get bad dice rolls. So like there's no way for a player to get what they want. Like you can get really bad rolls. Like I used to raid in World of Warcraft, like classic days, and like it's the same thing. Basically killing a boss was a loot box. And if you got bad RNG, that felt horrible. And that the other similar bad thing that monetization, loot boxes specifically, is it can lead to sort of that gambling thing and taking advantage of especially younger players who don't understand the odds. Like obviously if you're an adult and you understand like, oh, I have a 1 in 1 billion chance of winning this, like I may or may not, if I'm giving up my money, I'm doing it with a realistic choice or things like that. But for younger people or people with gambling problems, this is really, it feels really bad, and it feels very close to basically a slot machine, which, again, my opinion, there's a reason why like gambling is sort of regulated a little bit. Like you have to be an adult to go into the places and things like that. I think that's why they fell out of favor, especially, was because it's so blatantly or so close to a slot machine / gambling that people slowly became up in arms with it, and then government stepped in, obviously. To the second part of how they quickly become outdated, I think the less predatory it is, the longer it'll last. So I think if you're doing something that takes advantage of your players through some like mental mechanic of like the FOMO, fear of missing out, or things like that, I think those ones will fall out of favor quicker. The ones that like the battle passes, I think those have a longer lifespan, especially because they can change a little bit. Like again, Fortnite's battle pass is a little bit different from like Fallout 76's, where it's linear versus that sort of bingo card. Again, I think those, the more player friendly it is, or more player choice and agency, the longer they will last.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So someone's saying, can an item / concept remain a pay thing or progression? Can it be both? Might need more clarification on that, but
no, so I think like, I mean, unlocking items or things and having them be able to unlock through progression or through pain, I think that's fine. I think that's one of the better ways to do it. Obviously, if it's like an exclusive thing, maybe you want to put it off in a paywall, or vice versa, have it only be through progression. I think you just want to you probably want to have some differentiation between them. Like something like if 80% of your cosmetics or 80% of your items can be either purchased or gained through progression, that's good. I think you should keep a few, again, in both ends, so that if players want to spend and want to be big time spenders, cool, they can get something that's a little unique for them. Also, if you have players who are kind of like me and just be like, I just want to play the game for free as much as I can, I want to grind, hey, you got something for you. But I think, like, again, that's sort of maybe like 80 to 20 ratio, and it might be a different amount, but I think that's a good sort of starting point of like, I think it's great if players can earn things through natural progression. Again, with the battle passes and sort of their free tier, like if I play the game for free, I can go through the battle passes. I won't get everything, but I can get some of the things. I think that's I don't think there's a problem with that.
yeah, no, perfect. Okay. And I'm just checking in with Luke really quick. They asked the question, but it was very similar to what my question was about what games do you think had good monetization. Oh man, this is a good question. Are loot boxes similar to gacha games? Is there a difference between the mechanics? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I think there is a difference. It's not, I mean, I mean, I kind of consider them similar, but I think it's kind of like just an evolution. Like loot boxes are sort of like an evolution of the gacha games. Like when I think of gacha games, I think of the whatchamacallit, the old vending machines for the little homie dolls. That's kind of what I think of a gacha game, is like you put money in trying to get those. And a loot box is kind of the same thing. I mean, the only real difference is like between, like, a loot box can be very, very different. Each loot box can be very different from each other. Like gacha games tend to be sort of the same thing. I mean, yeah, I don't consider them too different at all. I think I've heard people frequently refer to like loot boxes as like gacha games. I only think of them as the magic packs, because that's sort of when I started out. Like when we were doing SOTOR, that was kind of the initial idea for SOTOR's loot boxes. Was one of the lead designers was a big Magic player, and he was just thinking, he was like looking at it from a magic pack sort of like, okay, we got commons, unrare, possible rare / legendary. That was sort of the thinking. So that's where my head is. But yeah, I think gacha games and loot boxes are pretty much the same.
They're pretty close. Yeah, I would say like with a gacha mechanic, depending on the game, I do like a gacha. I do think that there's a progression stopper there in the gacha sometimes, depending on the game design. But like there's certain, like a lot of the games I play, there's like elite raid things that you can't do unless you have these super high powered rare characters. But it wasn't.
I think, yeah, I guess in that, it again, like it really depends on what game you're looking at. Like some loot boxes probably have, like might be some loot box that has that sort of same mechanic where, oh, you can't open the loot box until you get this, or like what Valve does with Counter-Strike and those things, where like you get the loot box but you need to get the key or something like that. So I can have loot boxes from like a holiday special 3 years ago, but I can't get the keys anymore. So it's like, okay, cool, I can't do anything with them. So yeah, it's kind of, obviously they're outliers, but I think it's very similar.
Oh, this is a good one from Ricardo. So in terms of using ads for monetization, are there tools that allow you to control like which ad is presented according to the audience?
You are in luck, Ricardo. Unity Ads does have a Unity ad control feature. So the Unity, I think it's called Unity Ads Control. It basically allows you to sort of address those. And let me okay, now I want to make sure I say it right because I'm going to be like annoyed if I don't. But it allows you to do that. It allows you to say what ads will play. So it's ad controls. So Unity, if you go into Unity and search ad controls, that's exactly what it gives you. It gives you the ability to say, okay, I want to play ads for these certain types of ads, or I want to avoid these certain types of ads, like age grouping. Also, between locations. So if your game is all over the world, different places have different rules on what can be shown. We even have some testimonial from Yuka Games. I think that's what they're called. I forget the name. They had the same problem. And so, yeah, Unity ad controls would be a great way to do that for your first part of your question, for being able to control where they're played and all that. The mediation and which is now the iron source sort of version of it, the Unity mediation would be a good starting point for maximizing your earning. That allows you to go in and pick what types of ads are playing from which providers. So it's basically like a waterfall method. You can say, okay, I want ads from this group that get me this much per play. If there's none of those, drop down to the next one. So yeah, ad controls will allow you to control what's being played. Unity mediation, iron source, I forget the name of it. I think it's level up, or the iron source feature. It allows you to do the same thing. But if you go to like the Unity, so if you go to the UGS website, ads, you'll find ad control and mediation. Those will be great starting points for that. Oh, come on. Any questions, comments, concerns? I mean, you want to ask me something about 76, no Fallout fans?
I didn't get to play 76.
Oh, shame on you. Shame on you.
I love an RPG, but I found myself more into the fighting game world now, so I spend all my time.
I'm a 09er. I got into Street Fighter 4.
Oh, word, okay.
Been big into that.
Yeah, I think we run in a similar circle then, because I'm also an 09er. So
for those that don't know, 09er means 09 was when Street Fighter 4 came out, so a lot of us are called that.
Dustin started playing the Street fighting games. Can package items be profitable, or does it depend? Like packaged items.
I mean, do you mean bundles, Diego? Like a bundle of different items? Yeah, so bundles can be very profitable. Again, it's kind of the economic math you have to do with whatever you're creating, but bundles are also a great way to get people to purchase. Because again, you're offering a lot of things. Usually the bundles come at a discount, so like hopefully if you're doing it right, all those items, if you bought them individually, would be slightly more than the bundle. That can be a good tool. Also, if you want to like discount things, so put them all together, discount them. One thing that can be an issue with those, if you have items that have been on your store or been available for a long period of time, and then you bundle them, you can run into the issue where players already have a certain amount of the items. And so if, let's say, a bundle has 5 items, a player who has 4 of those items doesn't want to pay the same price as somebody who doesn't have any of the items. So that's an issue you can run into bundling. One way I've solved it in past games is what we call dynamic bundles. So basically a bundle that adjusts its price based on what the user owns. Again, that's a little more tech work. One way to avoid it too is if you bundle things initially. So like you create a new character and some art assets. Okay, we're doing the cowboy bundle and it's all bundled together. Have that on the store for several weeks or however long, and then break it apart later and be like, okay, now you can purchase these things individually. I mean, for Ricardo's question, so Ricardo's asking, how do you test for value perception with a game? So like, how do you know whether or not you're breaking the immersion experience or breaking your experience with monetization? Their example being a platformer where after every death you have to watch 2 ads, and then it could be cumbersome. There's no real like formula to test it. It really just has to be based on playing the game yourself and sort of seeing what feels good. I would say something like in your example, okay, if we find that after the 3rd death, players drop out of the game because they don't want to watch it, or I get to the point where I don't want to play the game anymore because I've watched 2 ads, maybe have an auto skip button, like, okay, if you've died this much, you can skip the ad. It's really, again, it's putting you the best way I can say it is just put yourself in the player's perspective. If you were playing a game like that and you had to deal with this or deal with the ads at these points in the games, does that feel good? Or does it feel like, maybe I need to adjust something, swap something over? I think that's sort of the best way to do it. Another thing is using either analytics or doing playtesting. So get people who haven't played the game or get them to play and run them through it and see, don't tell them anything, but like let them play and then see sort of like, where do you see them like cringing or turning off the game, or where do they message you and be like, I don't want to play this ever again? Like once you can see, like once you see where that is or where any issues are, that's sort of where you can see. And it's the same with any other type of monetization in the game, whether it's ads or purchases. Like if you're playing it and you feel like, that's kind of, I don't like that, feels kind of scummy or something like that, then that might be where you need to adjust your design.
I think we've done the duos. Again, Matt, like, thank you so much for taking the time, even while sick, to do this presentation. Like, I learned a ton. I'm sure everybody else here learned a grundle as well. Big reminder to y'all to be in that Discord. That's where we'll do more contacts. We have one more session coming up in a couple of weeks. It's going to be on optimizing your game, and that's going to be with Utsav Jamal, myself, and Michael Oakes from the professional services team. And yeah, we're going to talk you through like using the Unity profiler to check your game, check for performances, right? Because a big part of publishing to mobile is you want to hit as many devices as possible, which means your game needs to run optimally and smoothly. And we have tools to help you do that. So we'll see you all for that one. And Mason and Gordon, thank you for putting this on. And we'll see you all real soon.
Yep. Thank you so much. And again, feel free to reach out on any of the social media stuff.